Today we're going to talk about crossbow optimization. Things have changed dramatically with weapon masteries, power feats don't exist anymore, our important feats for crossbows are gated behind level 4, and weapon rules in general has changed to a point where we can juggle weapons. Things have gotten complex and confusing, especially with what you do with your hands. So today we're going to go through all of that for crossbows specifically, because I expect this to be the new standard for ranged builds. Welcome to Pack Tactics, where I'm going to show you how to use your hands. This video is not a build or anything, but it will function as like a skeleton for builds like Ranger and Fighter, because there is a tier 1 to 3 progression here. In the beginning, the hand crossbows do the most damage. Then eventually at level 12 or level 8 for fighters, you ditch the hand crossbows for a heavy crossbow. We will get to the reason later. Let's start from the very beginning. In the past, a single hand crossbow was the absolute king weapon of the game for 10 years straight. Now it's been reeled back significantly to the other weapons, but it's still an S tier weapon. I'm not going to talk too much about the past, but just know that this is an S tier weapon. It does 1d6 plus dex piercing damage, range of 30 to 120 feet. It has the light property and loading property. The price is 75 gold, so if you're going for 2 of them, that's 150 total. That's quite expensive for level 1, but it's manageable. All you really need in the beginning is weapons and armor anyways. Then you loot and buy things as you adventure. If you're desperate, you just ask your party. The weapon mastery is Vex. It says, if you hit a creature with this weapon and deal damage to the creature, you have advantage on your next attack roll against that creature before the end of your next turn. We obviously want to take advantage of that advantage, so good thing we have the light property. It says, when you take the attack action on your turn and attack with a light weapon, you can make one extra attack as a bonus action later on the same turn. That extra attack must be made with a different light weapon, and you don't add your ability modifier to the extra attack's damage unless that modifier is negative. Then it gives an example, but I'll give you a better one with hand crossbows. Now, most of you are thinking, 2 crossbows, 1 in each hand. Action shoot with your main hand, and then bonus action shoot with your offhand. And yeah, you can do that on the first round. But then on the very next round, you'll run into a conflict. It says in the middle of ammunition, each attack expends 1 piece of ammunition. Drawing the ammunition is part of the attack. Then in brackets, it says you need a free hand to load a one-handed weapon. So the solution is by juggling weapons. In attack, it says equipping and unequipping weapons. You can either equip or unequip one weapon when you make an attack as part of this action. You do so either before or after the attack. If you equip a weapon before an attack, you don't need to use it for that attack. Equipping a weapon includes drawing it from a sheath or picking it up. Unequipping a weapon includes sheathing or stowing or dropping it. We also have object interaction, which is separate from this. You guys are familiar with it. It's like the old rule. We will be using it with this interaction. Anyways, to explain the process, here are your hands. Hand crossbow goes in your main hand. Nothing in the other. Okay? Let's call this hand crossbow A. You use an action to shoot, add modifier to damage if you hit. Then you swap your main hand to the other hand crossbow, which is called B. You use a bonus action with that one and don't add your modifier to the damage. But remember, you have Vex, so if you hit with your action attack from before, then you have advantage on this bonus action shot. That's how you do it, and you keep doing this swap back and forth every round without running into any problems. Eventually, as you progress, you get features that make you better at your job naturally. Obvious examples are archery, fighting style, feats, and extra attack. Speaking of extra attack, let's talk about that quickly before we move on to feats. You reach level 5, you get extra attack. You have your hand crossbows with the light property. But let's say you don't have crossbow expert. So that means you're still dealing with the loading property. It says you can only fire 1 piece of ammunition from a loading weapon when you use an action, a bonus action, or a reaction to fire it, regardless of the number number of attacks you can normally make. Kobold, does that mean I can only shoot 2 times? I can't use extra attack? You shoot 3 times. Action, extra attack, and then bonus action. Loading is actually not a problem. Here's how. Same setup. Hand crossbow A goes in your main hand, nothing in the other. You use an action to shoot, then unequip hand crossbow A, equip hand crossbow B before attack, shoot with extra attack. Then bonus action, shoot with hand crossbow B. But Kobold, what about action surge? The start is exactly the same. Attack with A, unequip A. Equip B, attack with B. As your bonus action attack, fire with B again. Finally, we action surge. Attack with B for the 3rd time in a row, and unequip B. Then for your final attack, equip A and shoot. And that meets all the properties. Correct. That's why this needed to be a video so badly. I hope everybody understands now, because I'll most likely be doing this for years when talking about ranged martials. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about character creation in general terms. Obviously, you want your dexterity high, or at least 16 if you plan on using hand crossbows regularly. But what is not obvious is that you also need at least 13 strength. This is for later because Great Weapon Master requires it. This feat now works on all weapons with the heavy property, including ranged weapons, and look at that! The heavy crossbow has the heavy property. This is the closest thing left to a power attack, so we're gonna pick this up later. By the way, do keep in mind, heavy armor requires 15 strength. So going 14 strength at character creation might not be a bad idea, because Great Weapon Master also gives you an ASI in strength. By the way, all feats I'll be mentioning give some sort of ASI. Even though you're using hand crossbows all the time before you get Great Weapon Master, I still recommend you have a heavy crossbow or a longbow for long ranges. That happens from time to time. If you can snipe an encounter, then do it. At tier 2 play, there's the obvious dragon flying around, and fighting them with hand crossbows can be a little difficult sometimes, due to range. For those wondering what heavy crossbow does, it's 1d10 plus dex piercing damage. It's got a range of 100 to 400 feet and has the heavy property. Heavy property is completely different now. Like before, small races struggled with using them, but that's no longer a problem. The weapon mastery is push, which is pretty good. You can push creatures up to 10 feet away per shot. It's kinda like repelling blast. But Kobold, why do you pick this up so late? At level 4, you have 1 attack and your proficiency bonus is 2. Yes, your weapon die is higher than 1d6, but come on guys, it obviously sucks here. Sure, the very next level you get an extra attack and the PB increases to 3, but we have more important things we need to address first, for more consistent damage, and especially less damage taken in the long run. Damage dealt versus damage taken is a better metric than just DPR, because it keeps you alive for longer. That's basic optimization. It's the first thing you learn about. The enemies obviously do things to you. So let's start with sharpshooter first. The ignore half cover and 3/4 cover might be important. We have to figure out how the DM runs cover. That should be easy, you just ask them. Do they use cover regularly? You give an example like, if my melee friends go into melee, which they do all the time, does that provide cover for the enemies? Basic questions like that. That's rules as written. If they say no to that and don't use cover at all, then you know that sharpshooter feat isn't required. Now, it's still something to think about because you can fire in melee without disadvantage, and you shoot from insane long ranges without disadvantage. That helps with sniping, range versus range fights, and the obvious flying dragon in the sky. If you're super far away, enemies have a hard time dealing with you. They might not be able to do anything to you. That means damage taken is like 0 for like multiple rounds. To optimize this even further, think about how effective the Mongolians were. You know, ranged cavalry. At open fields, you win. Mount rules have not changed. The horse can still dash around 120 feet. And they can disengage without taking any of your actions. That means you shoot, then the horse dashes 120 20 feet away or into total cover. Yes, the enemies can maybe kill your horse, but if you're good with cover and general positioning, just staying away from melee enemies in general, then the horse will survive for a very long time. If it dies, you buy a new one when you get the chance. Maybe the paladin can give you his fine steed, or the wizard has a phantom steed. Anyways, I think you get the picture why this is important for damage dealt versus damage taken. You should always try to fight safe. You also get an ASI and dexterity. That means you might get an 18 dex, assuming point buy. It's not a strength ASI like Great Weapon Master. With 18 dex, you get better chance to hit, small damage increase, and better initiative. The avoiding covers and insane range is clearly more important than Great Weapon Master at level 4 or 5. This just provides more useful stuff for all of these situations, be it common ones or uncommon. Another important feat is Crossbow Expert. It ignores loading property, so that means you can have a shield in your offhand. That's +2 AC right there. Fantastic. You can fire in melee just like Sharpshooter. You can now add your modifier to the bonus action attack. And lastly, ASI in Dex. So again, that can potentially give you 18 dexterity. So better chance to hit, more damage especially with your bonus action shot, better initiative, and you're getting +2 AC from the shield. Again, like Sharpshooter, this is giving you more stuff. We take less damage, we have a greater chance to hit in general, and in melee, we can do more damage. I'm talking about compared to Great Weapon Master, by the way. So what feat do we pick at level 4? It all depends on the game, like how the DM rules cover, and what kind of terrain you're constantly dealing with. Dungeon crawls or open fields, maybe the battlefield looks like something out of Gears of War. There's also the players to factor in. Do they go into melee a lot? Do they cast web down hallways? Do they take advantage of control spells? There's tons of things. If you're starting a campaign at level 1, then you'll have a lot of sessions to get a feel around whether you need Sharpshooter or not. If your table runs cover rules as written, then grab Sharpshooter first at level 4. But if you always end up in melee somehow, grab Crossbow Expert first. It gives you more defense and damage there. If you know there's going to be a lot of dragons in the campaign, then grab Sharpshooter no matter what. Dragons who fly around and use breath or even spam spells are really hard to tackle without it. Dragons are really good ranged skirmishers. They're really dangerous up in the sky. Anyways, level 8 or level 6 for fighter. If you picked Sharpshooter at level 4, go for Crossbow Expert next. If you pick Crossbow Expert first at level 4, and you know for a fact that you don't need massive ranges or cover never comes up, then pick Great Weapon Master and start using the heavy crossbow. Still though, if you end up in melee a lot or go into tight spaces, you should keep the shield and hand crossbow in hand, because that's more of a defensive play. You should go back and forth with your weapons. If you're fighting safe in the back, heavy crossbow gameplay. If you're surrounded by enemies and you know for a fact that you're gonna end up in melee, shield and hand crossbow gameplay. You get the points. That's all I really wanted to talk about. I expect this to be the new standard for ranged builds. Once you have these 3 feats, you can go in any direction you want really. You have the important stuff. End of video. Thank you for watching. You now know how hands work. Maybe you can press the subscribe button. You can also support me on Patreon if you want. You get early videos and stuff. I'm off to read Stormlight Archive. Don't know anything about it, but I heard it's great, so I bought it. I've read chapter 1 so far, where Seth kills people, and it was awesome. Anyways, bye-bye.